Email sent by Jeffrey Epstein to Steve Bannon reads like more than a normal political exchange. It opens with a line spoken by Satan in John Milton's Paradise Lost. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. From the first sentence, the message sets a dark tone. This is not business language. It is not casual humor. It is a direct quote from one of the most famous speeches of the devil in Western literature. When Epstein chooses these words, and when Steve Bannon receives them without rejection, the exchange begins to look like a shared worldview built on pride, rebellion, and fascination with dark power. This analysis examines the email, the symbolism inside it, and Epstein's known evil actions to show how the language and context create the image of men who admire satanic ideas, whether openly or through symbolism. In the email, Epstein writes about freedom after exile. Here at least we shall be free. This line, also from Milton's Satan, is spoken after being cast out of heaven. Satan stands in hell and declares that ruling there is better than obeying God. By quoting this speech, Epstein places himself and the receiver, Steve Bannon, inside the same metaphor. They are not ordinary citizens discussing politics. They are self-cast rebels, imagining themselves as rulers of a fallen kingdom. The symbolism is heavy. Freedom is not described as democracy or civil rights. It is framed as separation from divine order. That framing is what gives the email its satanic shadow. The next escalation comes when Epstein writes that commentators forgot to mention Lucifer himself. This is no longer just literature. Lucifer is the angel who rebelled against God and became Satan. Bringing Lucifer into a political discussion about the Vatican turns the conversation into cosmic conflict. The church becomes heaven. Their opposition becomes hell. Epstein's wording suggests not just disagreement with religious institutions, but mockery of them through satanic imagery. Steve Bannon, as receiver, does not push back. His silence functions like approval, or at least comfort with the symbolism being used. To understand why this feels satanic, one must look at the meaning behind Milton's line. Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven is about pride over obedience. Satan rejects moral order because he prefers power. When Epstein uses this quote, he signals admiration for that mindset. It frames rebellion as noble and submission as weakness. In dark satire, this becomes a confession of values. Power matters more than morality. Rule matters more than righteousness. The email reads like a coded celebration of domination without restraint. This symbolism becomes more disturbing when placed beside Epstein's real-world crimes. Epstein was convicted of sex trafficking and abuse of underage girls. Court records, testimonies, and investigations describe a network built on exploitation, secrecy, and control. Survivors spoke of manipulation, coercion, and systematic abuse. His private island, his hidden cameras, his powerful connections, all created the image of a man operating above moral law. When such a figure quotes Satan about ruling in hell, the line stops feeling literary and starts feeling autobiographical. The fear comes from alignment. Satan, in Milton's poem, is defined by corruption, temptation, and the desire to rule others. Epstein's criminal life showed patterns of control and exploitation that echo that archetype. He built environments where he was absolute authority. Victims entered spaces where normal rules did not apply. Wealth replaced accountability. Power replaced justice. In this light, the quote, "We shall be free," takes on sinister meaning. Free from what? Free from law? Free from morality? Free from consequence? Steve Bannon's presence in the exchange adds another layer. As receiver, he becomes the witness and participant in the symbolism. Political strategy often uses dramatic language, but invoking Satan directly is rare. Bannon had built a reputation around populist rebellion, anti-establishment messaging, and ideological warfare against global institutions. When Epstein sends him Satan's speech in response to an article about the Vatican and migration, the imagery merges politics with apocalyptic rebellion. It paints both men as ideological exiles fighting a holy order. The Vatican article in the email becomes the trigger. Instead of debating policy, Epstein reframes the church's actions as part of a system worthy of satanic defiance. In satire, this reads like elite men casting themselves as fallen angels resisting divine authority. The church represents heaven's rule. They choose hell's throne instead. It is theatrical, but also revealing. The language shows comfort in positioning themselves against sacred institutions using the most extreme symbol available, Satan. Fear also comes from performance. Powerful men joking about Lucifer while discussing global politics creates the feeling of hidden rituals behind closed doors. Even if no ritual exists, the symbolism alone builds atmosphere. Secret emails, fallen angel quotes, mockery of heaven, references to ruling hell. It reads like fragments of a darker ideology, half spoken but understood between sender and receiver. Epstein's life amplifies that darkness. His homes were described as strange, filled with surveillance equipment and symbolic art. Reports mentioned unusual decor, statues, and imagery that observers found unsettling. Whether artistic taste or psychological display, it added to the myth around him, a man fascinated with power, control, and transgression. When such a man quotes Satan, the public imagination fills the gaps with fear. The satanic reading grows from pattern stacking. One element alone means little. A literary quote is just a quote. A political joke is just a joke. But when the sender is a convicted abuser who built secret networks of exploitation, the symbolism deepens. The words start to feel less like metaphor and more like reflection. The email becomes a window into mindset, a pride in exile, a celebration of ruling outside moral law. The simplicity of the exchange makes it more chilling. There is no long explanation, no philosophical debate, just a quote from Satan, a mention of Lucifer. A shared understanding. Darkness presented casually, like everyday language. That casualness is what makes it frightening. It suggests comfort with the imagery, not shock at it. In documentary satire, the email becomes a miniature manifesto. Epstein speaks the words of Satan as if they describe his own world. Steve Bannon receives them as if they make sense. Together, they appear as figures who admire rebellion against moral authority, who laugh at heaven, and who prefer power in darkness over obedience in light. The email does not prove ritual Satanism. It does not show worship or doctrine. But symbolism has power. Language reveals fascination. And when the fascination centers on Satan, the ultimate symbol of pride, corruption, and domination, it paints a psychological portrait that feels infernal. Placed beside Epstein's crimes, his trafficking network, his manipulation of victims, his secretive empire, the quote stops being literary decoration. It becomes thematic. A man who ruled hidden worlds writes about ruling hell. A man accused of moral monstrosity quotes the devil's speech of triumph. The imagery aligns too perfectly to ignore in satire. Thus, the email stands as a chilling artifact. Jeffrey Epstein, sender; Steve Bannon, receiver; Milton Satan, the voice between them. Politics, power, rebellion, and corruption woven into a few lines of text. Read one-sidedly. It feels like a confession wrapped in poetry, a glimpse into a mindset where pride defeats morality, where exile becomes freedom, and where ruling in darkness is spoken of not with fear, but with satisfaction.